What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Mike's Mini Motors. So in today's episode, we're going to be taking Ivy, which I've decided to name this bike, and we're going to stretch her out. I went ahead and picked up the 9.5-inch stretch from the Ruck Shop when they had their sale not too long ago, and it was already fairly cheap. And then while we have the engine off, I'm going to clean it because I don't know if I've ever actually cleaned this engine since I've owned it. And I had SuperClean actually reach out to me and send me some of the products to review, so I'll do that to try to degrease this thing, and hopefully it looks a lot better. And then on Reassembly, I also have a different seat frame that I picked up off of eBay. It's a TRS lowboy seat frame. And then it also came with the Just for Show flip bracket, so that the seat will actually flip up. And so you can actually access things. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. But before we dive into doing the work, let's go ahead and take a look at the stretch kit and we'll see what all parts came with. Alright, so ignore this part here for a moment, but this is right here is all the stretch kit components. So first off, you get the stretch bracket, which is pretty beefy. This thing's pretty heavy. Then you got your shock extension mount. All the mounting hardware with even a couple of dress-up washers for these ones, which is nice. And then since we're stretching it, it comes with extended or a new fuel line, so you can extend that, as well as an extended brake line. If you're using lowered handlebars or something like that, you should be able to use the stock throttle cable, but I'm using the stock handlebars for now, so I went ahead and also purchased a extended throttle cable from them. Alright, and then I'll put a link in the description so you guys have access to all of this stuff too. And then this is just the seat frame that I got from eBay. As you can see, it's a metallic dark green. It's a little bit darker than the bike is, but it'll be fine until I actually paint the full thing. But that came with like I said, the Just for Show flip up bracket so that the seat can actually flip up, because I believe normally on these seats your seat's just bolted down and doesn't move. Alright, so let's get to work. Alright, so now we're ready to start the disassembly. And so I'm going to get the seat and seat frame off of here, this little luggage rack, and then it's time to pull the whole engine off. I'll go into a little more detail what that's all entailed here in a moment, but first let me get this stuff off. Alright, so I got the seat and this luggage rack thing taken off, and hopefully this is a good angle for you guys to see. Now we can start unhooking the motor. And so what I'm going to start with is taking off the throttle cable here. Down here by your rear tire you have the brake cable, your fuel line right here, and then all the electrical connections I'm going to unhook. And then also unbolt the coolant reservoir. So skip through that real quick. Alright, so throttle, brake cable, all the electrical and the fuel lines unhooked. Spraying oil, gas on me. So now it's just, I think, 3 more bolts and then this engine comes off. So underneath here, if your frame has these caps, you got a bolt here, one on the other side, and then your shock holding it on. So I'm gonna get those bolts pulled off, and then I should be able to slide this engine back and off of the bike. Alright, so now I got this engine off here, I also pulled like the carburetor off. I'm gonna need to pull this off because it's not needed with the stretch. But you can see this thing's pretty grubby. So we're gonna go pressure wash it and use some SuperClean degreaser and see how she turns out. I'm just gonna put some plastic over the carb intake here and then zip tie it so the water can't get in there. And then yeah, she should be shiny. Alright, now she's all clean. That SuperClean degreaser did a great job. Now with any degreaser, one thing to keep in mind with aluminum is don't let it just soak on there because it can attack the aluminum. So make sure you're scrubbing it and getting it rinsed off there so it doesn't attack the aluminum. But I'm pretty impressed, this stuff worked great. They also sent me an aerosol can, which I didn't get a chance to try yet, and then also a wheel cleaner, which I'm excited to use on my D21 because it's got some gross rims right now. All right, so we're now ready to install the main 9.5-inch stretch bracket. And what you have to use for that is you reuse the bolts that you pulled out of the bushings here, out of the old engine hanger, and you can reuse those. And then they're supposed to come with a couple of nylock nuts that you use to put on the backside. Mine didn't come in the hardware kit for some reason. Luckily I had some, so it's not that big a deal, just a little annoying, but is what it is. So what we're gonna do is put this up there, use our stock bolts, go through the bushings on both sides, and then the smaller Allen screws with the dress-up washers going in the top of the frame here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that bolted on. All right, so they got the bracket in there. It's pretty simple. Well, you might have to fiddle with some of the washers that come with this thing to fill up gaps and whatnot. So over on this side, I did have to put in 2 washers to fill a gap, where over here there wasn't a gap. And that was with these already sank in, so it should have been centered. So you may have to mess with the washers, but it was pretty simple. So now that that's on there, we can now move to adding our shock arm. Okay, to mount the shock arm is pretty simple. You just need to keep your original shock bolt. And this feeds in there. And you tighten that down, and your shock arm extension is mounted. All right, so now we got the stretch bracket on there and our tension for the shock. Before I actually slide the engine on and mount it, I'm gonna go ahead and swap out the throttle and the brake cable. I'm just gonna do that in hyperlapse. They're pretty self-explanatory. Just undo it and route it through. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to that. All right, so I got the brake and throttle cable ran, and what I'm gonna do now is replace the fuel line. And if you look here, your fuel pump's here, and it comes up there, you got your one-way check valve. We're gonna unhook the fuel line from here and add our new one and then run it back. So it's just one little clip and pulling her off. All right, so we're now ready to take the engine and slide it and connect it. And we're gonna reuse this big long, the 14mm bolt that you pulled out of the engine for the stock hanger. And so you're just gonna slide the engine to where these mounts line up with this and slide the big bolt through. All right, now that we got the engine mounted with the stock engine bolt, we're ready to hook up our shock. And you can see here in the shock extension, there's 2 different mounting points. And just the difference is how high or low it's gonna make your bike sit. And so I'm gonna go to the front one just because I don't have a low down shock and I'd like this thing to sit as low as possible. So you just take the supplied hardware that came with it. All right, and then just tighten it down. All right, so I'm gonna be reusing the stock coolant reservoir, but if you're gonna be using this with the stretch kit, you do need to drill a new hole down further so that this will clear that. So I'm gonna do that off camera real quick, and then now we're just to the point where it's hook up the fuel line, cut the length, hook up our electrical, and yeah, I think we're just about done. Okay, here you can see a little bit better angle. You can see, move that bolt hole down, and now it's kind of sitting on the thing, but it's clearing-ish. All right, so we got this hooked up the rest of the way. I hooked up all the electrical, the fuel line, trimmed that to length, hooked up the brake cable, the throttle cable, all of that. And then even test fired it and made sure it ran, and we're good. Cut off the reflector so it's not gonna be hitting the tire. And I did test fit the floorboard thing that I had here, and there is interference with this bracket, so it doesn't work anymore, so I'm just gonna leave it off. But now we're ready to install our new low boy seat frame. And I'm just gonna kind of hyperlapse through this. It's just bolted on and it's about it. When I get to the flip up seat part, I'll film that again, but I'm just gonna hyperlapse with getting this put on. Alright, so the seat frame is installed. Like I said, it's just some bolts, pretty simple. Where normally you would rivet the seat to these bars, I'm not going to do that because I got this came with this just for show flip up. So as you can see, it's just sits here in a pivot so the seat can go up and down. And if I took the seat off the other frame, if you look here in the front, you got these two pedestals, and they actually sit on this bar, but there's these two screws, so you drill a hole through these, run the screws through there, and then that's what lets your seat flip up and down. So I'm gonna get those mounted and then see how she looks. And there you got it, she's back together. The seat frame was really easy. Doing the just for show Rucks flip up bracket was really easy, just two holes I had to drill and then mount the screws. And the stretch kit was pretty straightforward and easy install as well. Plus, the engine looks great now since I degreased it with the SuperClean degreaser. And I'll put a link in the description for the stretch kit, the seat frame, the flip up bracket, and even the SuperClean degreasers, so you guys can get them if you want. But yeah, now it's just time to get her off the lift and go drive this thing around. So it's a couple of days and about 100 miles later, I've been driving this thing all over town. I love riding this thing. And one thing I want to point out is now with this 9.5-inch stretch, the new stance of it, the way it's positioned the shock, this thing actually rides way more comfortably. When it was in the stock position, the shock, it was like, I don't know if it was quite bottoming out or not, but it was just not a comfortable ride. And now with that and the lowered seat frame, it's super comfortable. Like I said, I've been driving this thing all over town. So I would recommend the stretch kit. The install was pretty straightforward, not too difficult. And if you like the aesthetics of a stretch bike, I'd say go for it. And I'll put a link in the description to the Ruck Shop where you can pick this up. And then with that, I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. Stay tuned though, because I think what I got coming up next is I'm gonna be putting on some clip-on handlebars up here and some new turn signals, and so that'll be in the next video. All right, with that one, I'll catch you guys later.